Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Tracking radio show. Tracking is still alive and well. Join us as we interview master trackers from around the world. We'll hear their stories, their secrets. So tune in and enjoy all you hear. Welcome.
Today we have some very special guests. We have Bradford and Hillary Keeney from the Kinney Institute for Healing. They have traveled around the world and spent time with indigenous people learning their ways of healing. Are you with us? Can you hear me today?
We're here.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Thanks so much for being on the show. So you guys, why don't you tell us a little bit about your school? You have the Kinney Institute for Healing, is that right?
Yes, that's right. We direct the Kinney Institute for Healing, which is dedicated to what we call ecstatic healing and spirituality, and we offer a very special 2-year mentorship program to introduce people to the ways of ecstatic healing, shamanism, and spirituality.
Great. And you guys are in Arizona right now, but you'll be moving soon, is that right?
That is correct. We're heading out to Los Angeles.
Great. I got your book right in front of me, and one of these quotes in this book that I just keep coming back to that I really, really like, that I'm hoping you can talk a little bit more about, is says, "The ultimate tracking is not achieved with the mind, but with the heart. The ancestors pull us, and God pulls us. This is our greatest teaching." I just really like that quote. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
That is inspired by the world's oldest trackers, the Kalahari Bushmen, and what they bring that's unique to our understanding of being on the good road or following the good trails or tracking is that the highest, and by highest I mean everything, that which is good, that which serves all the wonderful things, even beyond our comprehension, that the greatest tracking, highest tracking, is where we're being tracked at the same time. We track the other. So to a Bushman, you don't just decide, I'm going to go track something, whether it's in the world of mystery or in the world of being hungry and wanting to find an animal for the meal. It's that the animal, the ancestors, the creator, everyone's tracking one another, and it all lines up, so all are participating at the same time. We might call that uber tracking, ultimate tracking, the highest tracking. And so that, is what living is about to the oldest ways, being on the right highway, the right rope, the right track, to the highest classrooms, to the highest hunting ground, to the highest sacred playground, whatever one could say, that at the same time is hunting you, tracking you down. And when you're being pulled and something's pulling on, you're pulling on a rope in one direction, it's pulling on you in the other, this is where longing, tracking, living, and loving all converge. And it's a matter of the heart. So there's a few words for you.
Yeah, I really like that. I graduated high school and really didn't feel like I fit into the modern world or nature, and it wasn't until I started reading some stories of tracking that it just felt like that's where the connection was for me, spiritually and physically. So it's really exciting to hear your take on it, the spiritual side of this.
Yeah, and the oldest take is that there's only a spiritual side. Now, of course, cultures go through all kinds of challenges and things happen to them, like things happen to people, and sometimes the old tracking ways start to get weak, and then it diminishes to just being, I'm trying to find someone or some critter. But the like I'm saying, the strongest original wave is far more beautiful and complex and heart and soul bound.
Yeah, so if we were to, break it down a little bit, like how would I identify a spiritual track, or how would I know, that's what I'm following or looking for?
Well, first of all, it's going to come pulling you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when even a young boy who becomes a man in the Kalahari, he knows it because there's what they call a tapping on his body. He wakes up in the night or early in the morning and feels something pulling on him. It might pull on his arm, might pull on his eyelid. It's usually the arms, and they believe that's a rope that's pulling them, and the rope is being pulled by an ancestor, and the other side of the rope is connected to an animal. That begins his initiatory hunt. And so in many ways, tracking is a weak word. Mm-hmm. It's really a pulling. So if you're not feeling the pulling, you're not really in the highest tracking. And the pulling is something that the body feels. It can be localized on the body, but it's a heartfelt thing because it inspires a tingliness throughout you, a joy and excitement. And the old strongest hunters, when they feel that rope pulling, it brings a song as well. Mm-hmm. So they'll sing that song to keep the pulling strong, and it'll take them to the animal. They don't even have to open their eyes. They just feel being pulled.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that is great. Go ahead.
So it's awesome.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the most beautiful metaphor to speak of it is really a rope. And if we remember that, many of the oldest wisdom traditions and spiritual traditions remind us that there are deep and abiding and complex relationships between ourselves and all things, plants, animals, other human beings, and ancestors. And so in our time, it's about remembering that there are many ropes that connect us. And the stronger we make those ropes and the stronger we feel them and nurture them, then we find ourselves living a life where we are feeling the various pullings, where we are organized by being able to hunt for, pull on the ropes that we feel calling us, whether or not it's a particular direction in our life, a particular person, a song, anything like that. Because in our modern times, as you know, as you said, growing up, we don't necessarily find ourselves in the same kind of situations in which these things come forth, or where our bodies are attuned to these kind of pullings and these kind of ropes of connection. And so once we enter into that way of being able to hunt and be hunted, or to track and be tracked, or to pull and be pulled, then we find ourselves awakened to a whole new way of living from the feeling of the pulling of these invisible ropes that connect us.
Yeah, that is great. So how does one strengthen these ropes? I think about mind, body, and spirit, and I would imagine that, the strongest ropes would come from the center of that, all three of those, is there some techniques to making these ropes, connecting them and making them stronger?
Well, it's probably not going to make any sense to have a workshop to teach you techniques of how to make your rope stronger, because in a way that perpetuates a kind of, I don't know how to say it other than a kind of disrespect for the sacred nature of how everything is tied together, even though we mean well. When we reduce it to, let's do, step 1, step 2, step 3, and bring all this forth, I think maybe we back up and just say that to an ecstatic shaman, as opposed to a ritual shaman, the former is the old way. An ecstatic shaman sees everything as connected by threads. When the threads are fed and made strong, they become ropes. And when the threads get weak, they break. And so when we today talk about being disconnected, dissociated, or separate from our inner and outer nature, we're talking about the ropes that become thin threads that are broken. So your question really becomes, how do we make the ropes stronger? And the oldest way is to be caught by the Creator, is to make yourself available. You're the one being hunted by creation. You must first begin with a humility of saying, I am not the hunter. I am not the tracker. I am the one being tracked by something holy, something sacred. Make yourself soft, make yourself available, make yourself vulnerable, and something will get a hold of you. Some great mystery gonna lasso you and pull you in. So it's the opposite of getting expertise to figure out how to find it. It's looking for you. And we have to stop, all the games of making ourselves insulated by armor and protective shields of technical know-how and posturings of expertise that dissociate us into thinking soul, body, and mind and heart are all different things. There's just you. You're just a critter, and something's hunting you. And get raw and get naked in the spirit, so you can be caught.
Yeah, and that's how we really teach in our mentorship program. We really begin by throwing people in a spiritual fire so that they can first have the experience of surrendering and being caught by spirit, so that they're really finding their rope and their thread to God that's hunting them.
Wow. So that thread and that I hear you talk a lot about a song and the music and playing that song and music, and that's part of the rope and the connection.
That's a great question. When you get down to actually witnessing the performance of someone making a rope strong, it's not that they're willing it consciously. It's that they become so full of soul. Let's just use that in a poetic way. So full of life, so full of spirit, that song erupts. It just comes forth spontaneously, and that kind of spontaneous bringing forth of song feeds the rope. And if you're inside the spirit, you would even say it is the rope. The songs are the ropes, and this is why the first thing about shamanism, it's easy to get lost with that word because there's so much mixed up teaching on it today. But the shamans are the song catchers, which is to say they get caught by the songs, and the songs are the ropes to all of creation, from the animals to the plants to ancestors to creation. So, you're going to be, if you're a great hunter, greatest hunters I knew in the Kalahari, those who could just, when it was time for the community to be fed, be led by a rope to an eland or to whatever animal they were hooked up to. They sang all the way. So the time you felt that tapping, you started singing, either internally or externally, and that song was circulating inside of you all the way till you released the arrow. So what got you to the animal was not having skill to read the ground, to read the signs on the trail that's often taught in tracking today. That had really little to do with it. It was there, but it was just sort of secondary. The primary thing is you had a song, and that song was your rope to the animal you hunted. It's wild.
Yeah, that is. I love that. That really.
I know.
Yeah.
That really rings. So how do they have a rich dream tradition? Do they pay attention to their dreams in the Kalahari, and do those help in any way?
Yeah, well, there's in the Kalahari they have different words for different kind of dreams, because obviously, like all human beings, there are the kind of everyday, what we would think of as a psychological dream, but then they have other sorts of dreams that they regard more as visionary dreams, where they are delivered songs in their dreams, spiritual lessons, things to make, things that bring a teaching or a connection to the ancestors. So that is a very rich piece of the spiritual tradition. But they also, as I said, have a way of protecting those dreams that are are considered more holy or more sacred. And those are the ones that deliver a song or deliver a piece of information or a lesson or a skill of some kind that really comes from the ancestors or comes from God.
That's right, and we in our culture can't distinguish. We don't have very good noses to smell, or I guess we like to say discern, what's a psychological BS dream, that is a wishful thinking dream, whether it's a daydream or a nighttime dream, from a vision. Visionary experience to the old traditions is always something inside of which you feel the pulling, you feel the ropes. So, and that will reveal itself through song, through a trembling body, through your heart being touched, that you're weeping with joy, and you feel smaller, yet a part of the greater whole when this kind of vision takes place. So those are visions, and anything makes you sort of feel important or that you've learned something, and yet you have not experienced the pulling nor heard song, is just seen as the psychological recycling of the ego self, that sort of thing. And today people mix that up. There are few people having visions. Most of it's just wishful thinking in the nighttime. So what we're looking for in the world of tracking God, as the Bushman would say, is we're looking for something more than a dream. Their word would be, we want to be visited by the ancestors, and they have a rope, and we need to have that rope be felt, and through that rope we can receive gifts of song, dance, of spiritual know-how. And that kind of vision is called a kabi, and if we receive one straight from the Creator, it's called a kankuri. So they have different words for the kind of experiences that take place in what we call dream. But what's important for us to remember is that we mix it all up, and we seldom either understand or experience that which is outside psychological dreaming. There, it's all about the ropes. It's a rope show.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, I'm also thinking about the wild. Is there, like a feeling of wildness inside yourself that I think a lot of today's modern people have to, keep contained or stifle? Is there a feeling of wild that goes along with this rope?
There is, and wild is such an interesting word in our world because it connotes sort of a free-form, crazy, out-of-control way of being. But I would say that the wildness here is really, as Brad said, stepping into having a deeper relationship and not knowing who is doing the pulling and who is being pulled. It's stepping into a greater ecology of being where we are less dissociated, thinking beings who are trying to get by through life solely through rational mind or thinking or understanding or intention or will, and instead finding ourselves part of a greater complexity where I guess the metaphors that are often used would be a dancer who feels danced by the drum, or the drum that feels played by a dancer, or the animal that is pulled by the hunter as the hunter is pulled by the animal, or the dreams that are coming from the ancestors and the songs that are then being sung back to the community. So the wildness that we feel is when we step in to living a life where we are hunting what I would call life force, and the Bushmen have a word for it called ngum. So when we're hunting holiness and we're hunting spirit, we step into a way of being that is less about feeling as if we are directing things by our own intention or will or rational self, and yet feeling improvisationally stirred and stirring the events of our lives or our relationship to the ropes and to spirit.
Yeah, that's been nicely put, Hillary, and this emphasis upon whatever distinction is made, whether it be the hunter and the hunted, or the song and the singer, those roles are interchanging so that the song is singing the singer, and the hunted is hunting the hunter, and it's going back and forth. And this constant changing of position is something experienced in the wild, which in the Bushman world is called first creation. And what tames the wild are our explanations, our naming, and our use of language. So if anybody's teaching you about the wild through charts and tables and words and names, you're basically getting a tame version of the wild. Mm-hmm. And so then the wild is the nameless, the ever-changing. And if we're going to embody that, then this kind of talking just disappears, and we move toward, empowered song. So we can start moving toward the wild through words by this interchangeability, which sounds paradoxical and shall we even say magical, because the antelope, the eland, is hunting me, and I can feel the rope of the eland on me, and that eland got a name for me. It's calling me home. It's hunting me. I'm hunting it. We're both being hunted in the scheme of things. So you start to sort of get into the chant ways and moving towards song, and what that does is makes your heart enter the heart of the eland. As the eland's heart enters you, you're actually hunting yourself in the hunt.
Wow.
You're tracking you and your relationship to all things that are participating in the wild of first creation, where everything is going back and forth, being one another.
Mm-hmm. And in this way, having this relationship to first creation, we no longer have to create any kind of unnecessary dichotomy between the wild of nature and the wild of the city, or the wild of an older way of indigenous living and a contemporary way where we're living among technologies and cities. So while we can invite ourselves to have those different experiences of a relationship to the way that the nature teaches us about the wild and the beautiful, delicate harmony and complexity of balance and all of that, at the same time, first creation, stepping inside to that constant ongoing change is something that is available to us whenever and wherever we are. So when we're working the spirit, we don't give importance necessarily to whether or not we're being tracked in a church or a temple or a barn or a forest. So this way of tracking and being tracked even goes past perhaps our connotations of being inside an so-called indigenous cultural way, and then bringing that into the contemporary times and the lives that we all lead now.
Yeah, you asked the question, how do we learn this, or how can we facilitate these things we're talking about? And in a way, there are some interesting examples of how this can be awakened. Some of them are pretty shocking. I have a friend. He's an old man now. He is a famous botanist in southern Africa, and he wrote the manual for the special service forces and in that part of the world, and he would train people, to live in extreme conditions. And he just took them out to the wildest place he knew in Africa, and without a compass, without a match, without anything, and just said, okay, we're going to leave you out here, and you're going to have to learn how to listen to the way your body's going to pull you to certain things. You're going to have to listen to newly found know-how without understanding, or you're going to die. And then they would just leave them.
Wow. Yeah.
And what happens, if they're not as severe today as they were in the old school days, but what happens, the body wakes up. If you just drop yourself out there, you start to have feelings, intuitions, awakenings. And what all this is you're getting back in touch with the feeling, and that's the word, feeling, not the thinking, not the know-how in the mind that follows a recipe. Oh yeah, number one, I got to look this way. Number two, I got to walk so many paces. It's none of that. It's listening to the felt sensations as the body, what direction to go. There's the water. the water will call you. And in a same sense, this is mirrored in the history of religion, when the early Quakers and Shakers just sat in a room with no ritual or protocol, and they said, if we sit here long enough, the Spirit will arrive. Let's just get ready for it to arrive. So in a way, if you stop forcing anything at all, you're going to feel the pulling. Call it spiritual, call it the water, call it the same. Something's going to happen if you just stop whatever it is you're doing. And then in a situation where there is need for you to do certain things to be alive, you're going to feel the pulling.
That's great. So kind of quieting your own waters a little bit so that you can sense the pull.
Exactly.
Yeah, or waking up your waters a little bit so you can feel the charge and feel the pull.
Oh, yeah. So in the communities out there, do the trackers, I think of trackers a lot, and you think of them going out into the environment to look for tracks and food and stuff, but is the tracker's role also to track the feelings? I think I've heard you call it arrows, like there can be bad arrows and good arrows. Is the tracker's job to also track the arrows of the community?
Well, it's interesting because we sort of bring that word trackers because in Kalahari everybody's tracking, because you can't live there without having that sense of a relationship to the ropes. And so when we call someone a tracker, that's because we sort of borrowed someone from the community and said, here, will you help us track this or that? So for inside their worldview, they're going to be talking less about tracking than about making their ropes stronger. And when the ropes are strong, then what we see as tracking takes place spontaneously. And the arrows you mentioned are another way of referring to the way in which life is available to us when it's condensed inside our heart's longing for a relationship to creation. And so arrows in many ways are another way of talking about a song. Everything comes back to a song, and every song comes back to a rope, and every rope comes back to longing and pulling, and all longing and pulling comes back to the heart, and the heart comes back to relationship to that which is all of creation. So we're using all these words to point, to different ways of referring to this. And so the good arrows are arrows full of life and nourishing of our being in relationship with one another. A dirty arrow would be an arrow that's just sitting still and not participating in first creation, where everything is experiencing the interchangeability of its role and position with everything else. So if you sit still, you just lose life. But if you move about and feed the good feelings that arise, then something's going to grab hold of you. And that something is mystery. Call it creation, call it God, call it ancestor. You're really never going to know, because in the knowing is the naming, and then the naming is not the first creation, and then you get lost, and then you need to go be found.
And maybe we could also call it nowadays in our language, we could say that it's really about creating a clearer channel with your spiritual antenna, or having 5 full bars. It's like a spiritual signal, so that you wake yourself up, so that you're able to be found. It's like God's GPS, because all these metaphors really came from old times, but we can be free to be creative and name them other things and bring them into the other ways of talking about signals and tracking and finding that we have today.
I like that, and I think too we should only track holiness, only track God, only track the Creator, because in that tracking, know that this is the equivalent of saying make yourself available to being tracked, hunted, and then whatever needs to be found, whether it's a winged one or whether it's a four-legged, is going to be in the greater hands of a bigger drama than our purposeful mind can generate. So when we think, I think I need to go out and find an elephant. Okay, we can do that. We can look at the spoor. We can do this and so forth. But, wow, it's better to just say, I just want to be caught by creation, and I'm on the hunt for creation. And if it is the greater ecology's wisdom to deliver me face-to-face with an elephant, then so be it. But I'm going to hand that purposefulness over to the mind of ecology, not my tiny little, I want to figure it out and prove how clever I am, human being isolated from the greater whole.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. I really, you've got me fired up. I want to get out in the field and just
yeah,
go wild, brother.
That's right.
Yeah,
get on the big highway.
What's that?
Yeah,
I said get on the big highway.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The high wild way.
Yeah. So how long were you guys with the Bushman out there? Or you've been out there several times, I imagine. So.
Well, I've been going for nearly 30 years, and became, member of various villages, communities. Several times almost didn't come back. I mean, it became such a part of my life. So I've spent a tremendous amount of time, a great amount of time in my life there. In fact, Hillary and I, just this last year, finally took some of the recorded interviews of elders we'd collected over the decades. It was like 12,000 pages of transcription. And we edited this and created what we at first called the Bushman Bible, which is the words of the elders on the world's first healing, spiritual, and tracking way. And this is coming out next year.
And it's called Way of the Bushman.
Right.
It's told by the tribal elders.
And so this is their words. So it actually will be it'll be a book, a sacred text on the world's oldest healing way.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
We're really excited.
We're excited about that. That was a killer
I'm putting
job.
that one on my list.
That was a 30-year job. Tracking those words. Yeah.
Well, trackers really appreciate you guys being able to bring back all these teachings and ideas and ways to be. We're really thankful for it.
Well, it's better to track than to hack and slack, but I can tell you this, make sure you track the highest thing and make yourself vulnerable, make yourself soft, make yourself humble, to be completely thrown in the deepest of the wild where your knowing is overcome, overtaken. It throws you to the ground. You're inseparable from the ground. There you can hear the whispering of the mother saying, come home. I'm out looking for you. Jump up in the air and make a little noise. Sing me a pretty song so you can touch my heart, and I'll bring you home. I'll reel you in. You'll never know the kind of surprises I'll show you. I might show you how you can step into being the soul, the heart of a worm. I might show you what it's like to fly like an eagle. But these things you cannot will. That'll make you ill. These things you must be pulled along the highest wild way. Anything less misses the entire wisdom of the Deep Ecology Show.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that.
And if people are interested in experiencing getting tracked by spirit, we're actually going to be at New York Open Center on October 19th. And we have many events coming up, but we'll be at New York Open Center on October 19th, and then we'll be at the Omega Institute in May 2015 for a very special 3-dayer. And all that information's on our website, which I know is on the site at KinneyInstitute.org.
Yes, and also I have that for anybody listening. We have that link in the description, so they can just click on that link, and it'll bring them right to that.
That's right.
Do you guys get out to the West Coast?
We do, actually. It's interesting that you say that because we were actually just in Santa Barbara for about a week, having a wild time, but we are actually going to be relocating one of the bases of our institute to Los Angeles. So we're going to be out on the West Coast a whole lot. So stay tuned. You can sign up for our newsletter and our Facebook page, and we'll be sending out all that information. So that's very exciting for us. So we're tracking California. We're being tracked by California right now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show and sharing some of the stuff that you've learned and stuff. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the work you're doing, and just do everything you can to make sure you're lost so something big can find you.
That's right.